So, you're nestled in the 1970s. You're the inventor of baby formula, a life-saving creation for babies who, for whatever reason, can breastfeed from their mothers. But just helping moms who can breastfeed isn't enough, is such a small segment of the population, is such a small customer base. How are you ever going to make a fortune with that? Never. So, you're looking to expand your formula business even more. Instead of just selling to moms who can't breastfeed, what if you could sell to every mother? If you could do that, your customer base will instantly increase by 20 to 100x. The problem is, you've got some steep competition. Mother Nature's milk, something that is vastly superior and has far more nutritional value for infants compared to the glorified powdered cow's milk, mixed with sugar that you're selling. So you need a way to fool the general public, to dupe them into thinking that formula is far better than natural breast milk. Now you may be saying to yourself, but Jake, if we did that, wouldn't we be intentionally making babies malnutritioned? Well, yes. So anyways, you need to convince the world that formula milk is a million times better than breast milk, which means you need a little bit of propaganda, paying doctors to peddle your formula, and the Nestle campaign that was concocted would turn into one of the greatest medical scandals of the 20th century from the biggest food company in the world. Ever notice when you're making up some quick, you stir until it's rich and thick. You hate to take that nice little sip because, it'll be gone in a sip. It's so rich and thick and chocolate that you can't drink it. That's the saddest sound I know. Applause. Coffee doctor. Oh, fine, have a camel with your coffee. Thanks. This night work's kind of rough, isn't it? That's right. But a camel's always a pleasure to understand how we're going to run our propaganda campaign for baby formula. Instead of starting from scratch, all we gotta do is take a lesson from some of history's foremost experts at molding public opinion. Cigarette companies and then a cigarette. It's the tobacco that counts, and Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. See contrary to the symbol of death and disease. It is today. Once upon a time, in the early 1900s, cigarettes were a cultural icon of sophistication, glamour, and sexual allure. A highly prized commodity for 1 out of every 2 Americans. And how did cigarette companies achieve the symbol of sophistication with things like full-color magazine ads with respectable-looking doctors and white coats puffing away with slogans like "More doctors smoke Camels" than any other cigarettes? An early example of an influencer campaign. Why? Because who do people look up to when it comes to what they consume? Doctors. Who do people look up to determine what's cool celebrities? We know with mathematical certainty that large numbers of people will follow the advice of their doctors, because we understand the psychological dependence men have on their physicians. So if our goal is to get mothers to choose baby formula over their own breast milk, all we gotta do is to get their doctors to tell them to. So you start Nestle's 1970s influencer campaign to basically get doctors to say formula good, breast milk bad. You pay doctors and nurses to suggest your formula as an alternative to breast milk. And in places like Asia and Africa, you even hire saleswomen, dress them up like nurses, and get them to hand out free samples and medical advice. And you make sure that these free samples are just big enough that by the time they run out, these mothers would have stopped making breast milk, naturally cementing a profitable, loyal customer who cares if Africa, one of your biggest markets, has polluted water. Who cares if most of the mobs using your formula don't know that they need to boil the water first to prevent the bacteria in the water from making their babies sick? Who cares if it's estimated that babies who are fit for formula in unhygienic conditions are between 6 to 25 times more likely to die of diarrhea and 4 times more likely to die from pneumonia compared to breastfed babies? But that's not your fault. Obviously, you print the instructions on the package. And they're responsible for reading them, even if they're illiterate. But then you run into a problem. Powdered cow's milk, sugar and vegetable oil are even close to real breast milk. It contains none of the stuff that can help babies fight off diseases or build natural immunity. It doesn't even contain enough nutrients to keep a baby healthy. And in 1978, Nestle executives were even brought before the US Senate to explain why all these babies were dying or getting sick because of their formula. Milk, would you agree with me that your product should not be used where there is impure water? Yes or no? We give all the instructions, just answer what is your fault? But we cannot cope with that. Well, as I understand, what you say is where there's impure water, it should not be used. Yes. Where the people are so poor that they're not going to realistically be able to continue to purchase that, and which is going to mean that they're going to dilute it to a point which is going to endanger the health, that it should not be used. Yes. I think now, then, my final question is what do you do, or what do you feel is your corporate responsibility to find out the extent of the use of your product in those circumstances in the developing part of the world? Do you feel that you have any responsibility? We can't have that responsibility, sir. May I make a reference to? You can't have that responsibility, no. So by 1981, the World Health Organization set new regulations where you can no longer compare breast milk with formula alternatives. That is a problem that can be solved by moving your marketing to somewhere with fewer restrictions like Southeast Asia and the Pacific, where formula sales are skyrocketing, while acting like you are breast milk's biggest fan in the US and Europe, even creating a cringy baby band to get your point across. And even after millions of people start boycotting your products and stricter laws are put in place to stop you from tricking people into using your formula. There are still reports of Nestlé paying their doctors to promote their products, giving out free samples and advertising in hospitals to this day. I would almost argue you should never give your child any formula that you haven't run by your pediatrician. Formula milk has around a 23 profit margin, meaning companies like Nestlé make around 23 cents for every dollar in sales. And by 2026, this industry is set to be worth more than $110 billion. But if you thought Nestlé stopped there, oh, you're so sadly mistaken. What is the number one thing humans need to survive? Aside from food, it's water. That's why the water business can be very lucrative if done right. Sea tap water itself, the stuff that comes out of your sink, is pretty inexpensive. But bottle up, that tap water market is coming from clear mountain springs or majestic fountains, and you have a ridiculous markup. You can buy a tank of tap water for 10, use it to fill thousands of plastic bottles, and then resell that tap water for $50,000 for one tanker. Load. Nestle pays $10. Once bottled, the same water costs $50,000, and this is not an exaggeration, by the way. Nestlé literally sold bottled tap water with one of their recent lawsuits dating back to as early as 2012. But just like baby formula, you can only get away with so much. In first world countries, it's third world countries where you can really take it to an extreme. In Pakistan in 2013, it was revealed that Nestlé was diverting clean drinking water away from villages and towns, and then packaging it in their factories. They would then resell that water back to the same people they took it from. Honestly, it's pretty genius. If you ask me, the people in these towns were forced to drink dirty, polluted water because they couldn't afford to buy the bottled water that was actually theirs to begin with. Here's what the chairman of Nestle had to say about whether or not everyone should have access to water. Yeah, extreme beauty song. Weird, foreign decade. Later, he clarifies his position. I have always supported the human right to water. Everyone should have enough clean, safe water to meet their fundamental daily needs. But if you thought Nestle stopped there, you are still sadly mistaken. Dan says he can pick his favorite chocolate blindfolded. Was it that one? Nope. Try this one. Yes, that's it. No mistaking it. That's Nestle's chocolate. The smoothest, creamiest chocolate of them all. Try the blindfold test. Prove Nestle's best tools. Nestle baby formula. Bad Nestle bottled water, bad, but at least your candy is okay.
right? I mean, what could be more innocent than a Kit Kat? Wrong again. 3 million tons of chocolate is eaten every year. But have you ever wondered where those cocoa crops come from? Well, a good chunk of it is grown in Africa, including the ones used by Nestlé,
which can involve a lot of child slavery and forced labor. Chocolate is one of the products. Nestlé is most famous for Kit Kat, Bar 1, and the Milky Bar are all nestled chocolate bars, and let's face it, coca is expensive. You have to bring it all the way from Africa, which is already eating into your profits. So what do? You tap into the cheap labor market. More specifically, you start buying coca beans from farms that use forced child labor to harvest the beans, and it was all going according to plan until the year 2000, when a report came out that Nestle, Cadbury and Mars were all guilty of buying blood coca, and that they knew about it all along. Nestlé promised to free his chocolate candy from slave labor by 2005 and missed that deadline, and all the deadlines after that. The excuse, quote, "The use of child labor in our cocoa supply chain goes against everything we stand for," end quote, says Nestle Executive Vice President of Operations Jose Lopez. No company sourcing cocaine from the Ivory Coast can guarantee that it doesn't happen, but we can say that tackling child labor is a top priority for the company, end quotes, which obviously made people even angrier. So to placate the masses, you collected all the cocoa you could find from France that don't use child labor and made Kit Kat. You slap a fair trade label on it, and it becomes a symbol of a reformed, caring Nestle. All the while, you still continue using dirty coca for all your other candy. And when trends change from being morally correct to being environmentally correct, you switch to a much cheaper alternative, an environmentally friendly label that takes less effort, money and resources and diverts attention away from your shady supply chain. But if you thought Nestlé stopped there, you are yet again sadly mistaken. I see automation displaces labor in your organization. To Dr. Sloan. Captain Q. Join me in a glass of delicious chocolate. Quick, well, we thank you, Doctor. I could use some energy. Incidentally, one of those torpedoes you fired at me was circling, and your suck. Thank you. Some people will do anything to get rich quick. It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and in 2002 they were in the middle of one of the worst famines in history. What does this have to do with Nestle? Well, in 1986, Nestle bought a German company based in Ethiopia that had been nationalized in the 70s. The Ethiopian government owed Nestle money and offered 1.5 million as compensation, but by 2002, due to a new exchange rate, this amount had become $6 million. As Nestle, you could have written that debt off pretty easily. There were millions of people starving in Ethiopia, and $6 million could have went a long way. It could provide safe drinking water for 1.5 million families, or anti-diarrhea medicine for 750,000 kids, but instead of writing this debt off, you demand your money back. Even while you are making a $3.9 billion profits, if people dislike Nestle before they really hated Nestle. Now, and by trying to get money back from Ethiopia, you commit what would be known as the greatest public relations blunder of the decade. Nestle eventually backed down due to mounting pressure of boycotts, but the damage to their reputation have been done today. Nestle is the biggest food company in the world. Even after years of controversial tactics, to say the least, no one can deny that international need for water formula milk, and yes, even chocolate. And they've done a pretty good job of keeping their shady past on their wraps. So people are still buying products from their almost 2,000 different brands. Nestle operates in 190 countries, employs almost 300,000 people, and has 376 factories worldwide. Nestle is one of the best employers in Europe and a powerhouse of a food company. A food company where even Nestle has admitted that 60 of its products aren't even healthy. Yes, once again, I kind of look like an SJW. It came out a little bit more purple than I anticipated, but I assure you that it should fade out to a more natural blonde. If you're new here, we make video essays, documentaries on the most provocative stuff in the world of money, power, war, and crime. So, if you're not already subscribed, click that red button below, because you will not regret it. If you want more daily life kind of stuff, you can follow me on Instagram, jtrend.io. Thanks for being part of the Watch, the End Club. Keep sharpening that mind. Stay dangerous out there. And I will see you guys in the next one. You